Alright people, it's time for the second volume of Archetype Rematch. In today's episode we'll cover, well, everything that's left from the other archetypes that got some support after my initial review on them on Archetype Analysis. And after this, we're probably not going to be seeing this series for a long time until I get 60 or more cards uh, to review in the next volume as well. This will contain 61 card this time because, like hell, I'm dropping off one card into the next volume just because it exceeds 60. You get the point. Anyway, yeah, let's start off with the first archetype that got some new support, which is Melodious, which only got one Link monster known as Bloom Harmon the Melodious Virtuoso. And due to the fact how long the last video was, I actually studied each card a bit closely before recording this, so I can basically say any important things. What this thing essentially does, it requires two fairy monsters, which is actually pretty damn generic for an archetype such as this, and for that I appreciate it. It basically allows you to get that aria lockdown where you basically uh, are untargetable by card effects, and you get to summon another monster such as Mozarta, so you can swarm the field a lot faster with her effect as well. So yeah, it also enables a bit of fusion setup by allowing you to summon Soprano as well if you don't care about Aria's field lockdown effect with the card effect protection. What I meant to say. So yeah, they still do lack some tools in the consistency department to make them a bit more versatile, but this is certainly on a better track towards that uh, versatility and consistency. So yeah. Now our next archetype which received support is Chronomalies, also with one monster, but this is a main deck monster, that being Chronomaly 2 Spa Rocket. This is a level 4 with 1000 attack and defense, and it's a rock monster, and basically is designed to function in decks centered around number 6 Chronomaly Atlantis and its Chaos version, as it basically dumps a Chronomaly monster from the deck or extra deck to the graveyard, which can be number monsters such as Machu Mech or Chateau Hayek, basically. Yeah, or if you want to dump the regular number 6 in order to revive it with something and then rank it up with with a rank up magic or something. Its effect when it's used as Xyz material is admirable, but overall, yeah, you can't summon it with Gordianot, that is, and you can basically turn any Xyz monster into a double attacker. But yeah, it is there, but it's most likely going to be linked away before going into an Xyz material. So yeah, I don't have much experience in playing Chronomalies, so uh, take something I say here with a grain of salt. So yeah. Next up we have Harpies, which received now multiple cards worth of support, a grand total of 6 support cards. 2 main deck monsters, a link monster, 2 spells, and a trap. First off, we start with the main deck monsters, first up being Oracle, which I mentioned in my top 10 videos of cross-referencing Yu-Gi-Oh cards, since Oracle highly resembles Puppy, in my opinion, from Monster Musume. Uh, yeah. Uh, anyway, this card is meh in my opinion because you can only special summon it if you control Harpy's Channeler or Harpy's Pet Dragon. Because I only say these two because nobody in their right mind is going to run Harpy Lady Sisters in the 2019 and 2020. And it also happens to have a search effect for back row support specifically centered around Harpy Lady Sisters, which I don't know how to feel about. And Harpy Perfumer, their other main deck monster which they received, is even worse in my opinion. It has the same search effect, but if you had a level 5 or higher Harpy monster on the field, meaning either Pet Dragon or Channeler, and I don't remember if Pet Baby Dragon can also become a level 7, I don't know. You get to perform that search effect twice, so you get double the search power, But for our lineup of cards, nobody basically ever runs because, well, Harpy Lady Sisters are generated. Don't get me wrong, there are a few other new support cards here which are worth searching with this because they have some additional effects. But you get the point. I think Perfumer is a bit worse than Oracle due to the fact that she doesn't have a special summoning condition unlike Oracle, so yeah. However, their link monster is actually pretty sweet, that being Harpy Conductor. She points bottom left and bottom right, requires 2 wind monsters as material, has 1900 attack, and it's basically a very versatile card, no question about it. It basically plays into the Divine Wind variant playstyle, and it also revolves around the playstyle which involves running Harpy's Hunting Ground and destroying stuff with it. And it also, and the new support in the Spell and Trap lineup actually has floating effects when they're destroyed by card effects of Harpy cards, so yeah, this is basically a three-off staple in Harpy decks. Yeah. Next up, we have their Spell and Trap cards. First of which is Alluring Mirror Split, which is alright, but mostly not unnecessary in the deck. So, if you run this, it's probably at 1 or 2. The Harpy's Feather Rest is an archetypal Pot of Avarice, and yeah, it's fine, perfectly fine for what it's supposed to do. It's a bit on the specific side when it comes to drawing an additional card, and it also locks you into wind monsters for no reason. So yeah, you can splash Speedroids if you feel like it. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, anyway, the last card is Harpy Lady Elegance, which is purely run because of its floating effect, which allows you to add a Harpy monster from your deck to your hand, any Harpy monster, which is pretty damn nice. Because its first effect, again, requires Harpy Lady Sisters to be on the field. Basically requires her to shuffle them into the deck, which also goes against the logic of monsters of such caliber, which are ridiculously hard to summon. Basically allows you to substitute them for 3 monsters, which is it is good. Don't mind me. Don't mind me saying that. But Harpy Lady Sisters are a main deck monster, which is very specific, which has very specific activation and summoning restrictions. So yeah, that's kind of the problem that comes along with this card. So yeah. Speaking of wind archetypes, Yosenju's also got some new support since my last video. First of which is Isna, which is a alright addition to the archetype. It basically has the standard Yosenju self-bounce effect upon the end phase of it being normal summoned. And of course it has some additional effects, and that being a +1 effect, which is its second effect, which is most likely always pulled off, and its first effect, I should say, where it allows you to basically shut down the opponent's card effects such as Solemn Warning, Solemn Strike, basically the Solemn Brigade when Yosenju monsters are being normal or special summoned at the price of discarding a card, of course. So it's a perfectly fine card. And then we have Yosenju Sabu, which is also a okay card since he's pretty much a very okay searcher, since he searches out the Yosenju Pendulum lineup, all 4 monsters. Yes, I said 4. They received a new Pendulum monster, and it also searches in quotes there because it doesn't search, it sets Dizzying Winds of the Yosen Village or Yosen Whirlwind from your deck or face up in your spell and trap zones. So yeah, it basically allows you to set up your some of your better back row pieces into play as soon as this thing hits the field, which is overall a nice ability to have. And the last monster they received is Myosenju Hitot, another Pendulum monster, which is a level 10, scale 3. I think he has reverse stats of Myosenju Daibak. I am not entirely sure on that. But just like Daibak, he's actually very much worth running due to the fact that it's your secondary boss monster, and it basically it allows your Senjus to have some more beefy damage outputs when they swarm the field with their with their unique type of wind effects. So yeah. Your Senju Wind Worship is their only spell card they received, and it's essentially a trio of staple due to the fact that it offers you a benefit upon your Senju's leaving the field, which your Senju's up until this thing came out didn't even have. So yeah, running any less than 3 of these is usually not advisable. Then we have the last card in the Yosenju lineup, that being Yosenju's Sword Sting, which is, I gotta be honest, kind of unnecessary in the deck because Yosenju's had access to this type of utility way before this thing showed up in, not maybe most of the time within its own archetype, but other archetypal engines had plenty of setup and tools in order to perform such type of removal as this thing offers. So yeah. Next up, we have an archetype, another Shingo Savatari archetype that is Abyss Actors. They also received two cards worth of support, a Link monster and a spell card. First of which is the monster Abyss Actor Hyper Director, which requires an Abyss Actor Pendulum monster as material. And it's not bad, but it's not good either. Uh, it's specifically made around to function around pendulum monsters, which is fine. You can substitute your pendulum monsters a bit more thoroughly with the existence of this. It has a nice era when it comes to extra linking, which is uh, a kind of a rare case in Yosenju builds. But yeah, pendulum decks are very few and far between in the modern Yu-Gi-Oh! So the existence of this is kind of understandable, but at the same time, I kind of wish it did a lot more. Kind of like how Harpy Conductor does a bit more for the Harpy archetype. So yeah. And the last card in the Yosenju new line of support is Stand In, a quick play spell, which is honestly a lot really generic, as it allows you to tribute any monster on the field to target a monster in your opponent's graveyard with the same original type and attribute, and special summon it to your field, and you can only activate one stand-in per turn. And basically, what the problem with this thing is, Abyss Actors have very specific types and attributes. Most of them are dark monsters, first of all, which is okay. Dark monsters are one of the more highly played monsters in the game, but their types are actually very varying. Most of them are, I think, most of them are fiend monsters, if I'm correct. Yeah, Hyper Director himself is a fiend monster. I just checked. So yeah, it's overall a bit too specific for my taste. So yeah. Next up, Earthbound got a new support lineup. First of which is the only main deck monster, Earthbound Greater Line Walker, which is a level 8 monster with 2900 attack and defense. And if you control a synchro monster and have a synchro monster in your graveyard, you can basically summon this thing from your hand. But keep in mind, you have to have a synchro monster on the field and in the graveyard, so it's a bit more specific than you might initially seem at first. It has a pretty sweet search effect for an Earthbound Immortal monster, and I have no idea what the hell is the purpose of the third effect by making the opponent's life points 3000. Yeah, sure, if you turbo this thing out, you can basically get rid of 5,000 of your opponent's life points, and yeah, you can make the Earthbound Burn deck burn a lot quicker, which is basically impossible since Earthbound Burn is not a build. So yeah, run by preference. Just that's all I'm gonna say. It isn't a staple in any means. And finally, after a long time, it's kind of surprising that they didn't have it. Earthbound's got a field spell called Earthbound Geoglyph, and it works on any level 10 monsters when they're on the field. It cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects upon any level 10 monster being on the field. And you can also treat a Synchro monster as 2 tributes for the tribute summon of an Earthbound Immortal monster, and if a Synchro monster is special summoned except during the damage step, you can add an Earthbound Immortal back row piece to your hand, and you can only use one of these effects per turn. It basically makes a 100 Eyes Dragon into a into a single monster, which can bring you out an Earthbound Immortal. However, this initially made me dislike 100 Eyes Dragon a bit more due to the fact that his effect to search out a Earthbound Immortal isn't when it's sent to the graveyard by any means. It has to be destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, which again sucks with the existence of this thing. I would have loved it if you could actually tribute 100 Eyes and then search out another Earthbound Immortal to have for something like, I don't know, you can even run non-existence in, I mean empty machines, sorry, in the Earthbound builds, because I don't think it actually requires Time Lords for discard fodder in order to draw a card. So yeah, that's my opinion on that. And Ultimate Earthbound Immortal, the last card, there's absolutely nothing ultimate about Ultimate Earthbound Immortal, because it's one of the most generic pop effects in the game and one of the most predictable ones, so it's not good. Next up, Buster Blader's got a support of 1 Link monster, that being Companion Whelp of the Dragon Swordsman, which basically equals the Buster Blader fusion monster on the first turn, and basically turns Buster Bladers into an OTK machine, since you can basically add a Destruction Sword card from your deck to your hand, because you can always send the fusion spell to the graveyard and then recover it with its own effects. And you can also special summon a Buster Blader from your hand, which is very advisable that you do so. It also points bottom left and bottom right. Requires any 2 monsters as materials, which is already very fun and amusing. And it basically allows you the Buster Blader fusion monster to coexist with the with the Synchro monster, and have the Buster Blader Dragon Slaying Spirit be alive and well in the Link format, because Buster Bladers used to struggle a lot with putting out multiple extra deck monsters as soon as Link format came around, and so it's good to see this addition to the archetype in that form. And now for the archetype I thought that would never receive more support, that being the Fairy Tail archetype. Yeah, the one that Siegfried's brother used in his duel against, well, his duel against a lot of people, against Yugi, against Rebecca. Yeah, you get the point. First of which is Gingerbread House, which honestly feels like a reference to the Royal Cook Pals from the Arc 5, and because of how it functions, it's not good. It's basically fuels the opponent's monster's OTK strategy to hit you even harder during the next turn, and yeah, this is basically a very inconsistent monster removal, and yeah, I just hope they play Ridicule World, because it's a much better card than this. Gold Moon Coin I've known for quite a bit, and I didn't actually think that it actually belongs to this archetype. Yeah, Gold Moon Coin is sucks heavily, and I'm not going to go into why this kind of effect is bad. All I'm gonna say is don't run it. And Water of Life is one of the worst monster reborns I've ever seen, and you should never ever run it. So yeah, one of the just like the Blue Eyes support wave, this is one of the worst support waves I've ever seen for an archetype. And next up we move on to Gadgets, which also received a new type of support. And first of which is their first monster, Boot Up Corporal Command Dynamo, which falls under the category of better than Boot Up Soldier Dread Dynamo, but equally as unimpressive and still not worth running. However, Boot Up Admiral Destroyer Dynamo, their next monster, level 8, is actually surprisingly decent. It basically incentivizes you to run Ancient Gear Gajiltron Dragon as a tech option in Gear Town Turbo builds, as it also allows for rank 8 plays in Gadgets. And yeah, I actually play tested the Ultimate Offering Gadget deck before, And yes, I did have Gajiltron Dragon both as a trade-in option and as Gear Town bait for MSTing or Twin Twistering, and it actually worked quite well. So with the existence of this, I believe the Gear Town Turbo build alongside gadgets could live up to the name of being a very powerful deck. Yeah, great card overall. Boot Up Gear Charge is really confusing for the one who's getting into gadgets for the first time, because new gadgets, just like you saw with the effect of Boot Up Corporal Command Dynamo, if you pause to read it, focuses on this unusual gimmick of having gadgets be equipped to other machine monsters, and this one continues the legacy, but yeah, it's this basically requires you to build a deck around said gimmick, because uh, other than that, it's generally not good. So, yeah. Then we have Boot Up Order Gear Force, which is surprisingly very generic machine type support, and it's basically better in gimmick puppet decks, because uh, those can actually prove to have a lot of field clearing effects available at the very specific moment, and this can help out with said field clearing, as they can basically OTK for game there if they don't have enough material in order to summon Chaos number 44 gimmick a puppet of Dark Strings. So this can be a decent option if said monster is not available. And the last card is Power Hold the Moving Battery, which, just like all trap monsters from the Gadget series, is not worth running, but this one is a little bit better, because instead of having to control gadgets in order for it to gain its attack and effects, you instead equip them to this thing, which is the new established gimmick, which is again pointless, but ultimately not impressive enough for me to consider building a deck around it. Next up, Valkyries. These also got some new support. And the first of which is Valkyrie Funfet. I'm gonna call her like that. It's a level 2 monster which grants a alright attack boost to all Valkyries for each of your opponent's banished monsters, which is the Valkyrie playstyle like we established in the original review. And it also happens to be a Foolish Burial Goods for the archetype, which is alright. Nothing too special, but alright. Erda is very good. And there's also another monster which we'll get into just in a second, which can special summon her in order to get her effect off. And yeah, it's genuinely a very nice support card. And set monster which can special summon Erda easily is Sigron. Sorry, that's pronounced it wrong. It basically also offers some graveyard setup for the Valkyrie spell and trap lineup, and it also has a nice special summoning condition, and you can also special summon another level 8 or lower Valkyrie monster from your hand or graveyard, which is the majority of your monster lineup. So yeah, it's basically free materials, and it allows Erda's effects to go off and basically kicks off the effects of all other Valkyrie monsters. And that was the last monster. Now we have 2 spells and a trap. First of which is Valkyrie's Embrace, which is pointless by the standard of modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And the existence of Link monsters. And Pegasus's Wing, which is fine, but you need to run the accursed for Fortune Chariot in order to run it, which is a level 6 Union monster. Yes, I know it's searchable by Union Hangar, but you running Union Hangar in Valkyries is something is one of the last things you want to do. So yeah, again, in builds which are dedicated for Valkyries to be attacking directly, this is one of the centerpieces of the deck. So yeah, it's usually ran at 3 there, but in a more competitively focused Valkyrie deck, it's usually fine at 1 or 2 if you really feel like running Fortune Chariot. And lastly, there's the trap card Lodge's Flame, which is a surprisingly great lockdown card for attacks. And if your opponent happens to get rid of it, you can basically summon any Valkyrie monster which can proceed to disrupt their plays even further with their special summons effects. So yeah, it's overall a really fine card. After Valkyries comes Rose Dragons, which also receive new support in form of a Link monster and a spell card. First off, the Link monster Crossroads Dragon. It's a Link 2, it requires 2 monsters with different types, points left and down, has 800 attack, and it's pretty dang ridiculous. It's a Link 2 monster which can special summon Black Rose Dragon during the opponent's turn, making Black Rose Dragon a better version of Nibiru, and yeah, dropping Black Rose Dragon as a play interruption with this is absolutely phenomenal and hysterical, just like dropping down the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity during the opponent's turn is absolutely priceless. So yeah, run 3 and don't think about running any more than less. And as for the field spell White Rose Cloister, which is according to the wiki the manga counterpart to Black Garden, it's a fine alternative to Black Garden, which is mostly used as its own engine index that are built around its negative side effect, where it halves the attack of all monsters and special summons lots of tokens, and yeah, basically built around its own gimmick. This is more like a Fortissimo, the mobile fortress kind of card, where it allows you to special summon a Rose Dragon monster or a plant type monster from your hand. While you control no monster, so it's basically also an archetypal Valhalla in that. And the second effect is it's not going to be that relevant in the long run, but it's certainly a nice option to consider having. Oh, guess what archetype got new support as well? Frogs! Yeah, those guys actually got some new support. Only one card worth of support, which is this little guy known as Center Frog. This card is bad. It's one of the worst cards ever made, I dare say, so that's all I'm gonna say. Let's move on. Next up we have also another archetype which got a 1 card worth of support, which is Simorgh. That being one Link monster, Simorgh Bird of Kings, which requires 2 or more monsters including a winged beast monster, points bottom left, bottom right and down. And it basically offers Simorgh some swarming ability and keeps up with their theme of restricting the opponent from using any back row, while they keep gaining advantage from using their own back row pieces and back row slots. So yeah, it's usually a 2 or 3 off staple in the Simorgh builds, and also happens to be a wind monster, which also plays into the theme of Divine Wind variant plays. So yeah, it's a good card in my opinion. And the next archetype in the line of support is Gearfried. With one main deck monster, 1 fusion monster, 1 spell card, and a trap card. Well, that's a fun way of putting it, but anyway. First of which is Sublime Knight Ex-Paladin, which is, you wouldn't say that it is actually a Gearfried support card. However, how do we know this? Well, Gearfried started going in the direction of them being fire monsters based on Gemini monsters, and this thing sure does make you remember that fact, as it's prime Gemini support at its finest, meaning, well, most Gemini support are basically bad due to the fact that, well, they're freaking Geminis. And not to mention that basically all the utility we get from this thing is mostly gonna be rendered irrelevant, since there aren't that many relevant Gemini monsters that benefit from being summoned by this thing. So yeah, not to mention that they also needed to be equipped to this card for, well, and needed to be fire monsters as well. There are 2 monsters in the entire archetype that can be equipped to this thing, including not including this thing, that being God Phoenix Gearfried and Phoenix Gearfried, the original one. So yeah, God Phoenix Gearfried is a bit more relevant in that sort of form, but other than that, it's alright if you really want to, if you really crave a Gemini focused deck. Next up we have Guilty Gearfried, the Magical Steel Knight, which requires 2 warrior monsters with different attributes as material, and it actually has the effect to protect itself from targeting by destroying any card that targets it, and you can basically destroy any card on the field upon doing a set effect, which is alright in my opinion. And if it is a fusion summon using only monsters on the field as material, it can make a second attack, which is also pretty cute. And during damage calculation once per turn, if it battles an opponent's monster, you can banish a spell from your graveyard and it gains attack equal to half its defense, which is completely irrelevant because, well, defense points, link monsters. I know you can banish main deck monsters with this, but main deck monsters, which are usually ran in in today's meta, usually don't have. Well, they're even lucky if they can actually go above 1000 attack, providing they're not tribute monsters, of course. So, yeah. Gear Breed is it's definitely a unique card, but especially I actually like the artwork a lot. It reminds me of a RPG game menu. It's a fun little equip-focused play enabler for basically any archetype that revolves around equip spells. In well, it's bound to see some play in Vylons as well, because these are all about equip spells, and they do have some very nice equipping shenanigans. It's basically in Vylon builds. It's basically will kickstart Omega Turbo in even faster and better. So yeah, what does this have to do with Gearfrieds? Nothing, absolutely nothing, and that's why we're moving on. Yeah, it has the second effect of with the Fire Warrior monster or a Gemini monster from your graveyard to the bottom of the deck in order to draw a card. Yeah, you can do this. Basically, you get to perform a search and recover your draw phase, but that doesn't basically that effect doesn't see the light of day in Vylons, so it's basically unimportant here. And building a deck around Gearfrieds is usually very rare and very sparse. So yeah, the only Gearfried monster that decks are being built around is God Phoenix Gearfried. So yeah. And the last Gearfried support card is Gemini Ablation, which is, again, prime Gemini support and pretty much nothing to directly do with Gearfrieds other than Phoenix Gearfried and God Phoenix Gearfried. So, yeah, they are staples in those builds, but in pure Gearfried builds, they're essentially not that important. So, yeah. Alright, now moving on to Dark Magicians, which actually got some pretty damn nice support since my review. Multiple cards as well, because they're Dark Magicians, and yeah. First of which we have their only main deck monster, that being Magician's Soul, which is a 3-off staple, and I cannot stress enough how much of a 3-off staple it is. It's special summonable by 1/1. You can basically set up the graveyard with your spell and traps which you don't need, and then go +2 off of that. You can special summon it by performing a Foolish Burial, and not to mention you contribute it to recover the monster you sent to the graveyard in order to summon it. So running any less than 3 of these is usually not advisable. And the last monster they got as a new support is the Dark Magicians, the level 8 fusion monster, which requires a Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl and any spellcaster monster. And of course you can always use both, because that's just how it's meant to be. I freaking love this ship. Anyway, moving on. And it basically allows you to also gain some nice pluses off of you just simply making plays. And if you happen to be draw into a quick play spell or a trap card, you can basically activate it instantly. So basically turning Eternal Soul into a very, very powerful protection effect, which can basically swarm the field with Dark Magicians. So yeah, this is a very great card, and let's pray it hits the TCG pretty soon. Next up we have their 3 spell cards and a trap card. First of which is Faithful Servant, which is alright, but it requires the Palladium Oracle monsters, which are usually not usually ran that much in swarm-centric focused Dark Magician builds. They usually a card such as this, which relies this much on the Palladium Oracle monsters, usually requires that they're being entirely made of Palladium Oracle monsters, which essentially is the most applicable in Fortune Fairy decks, which I covered in the previous volume. So yeah, it's a quick play, so that helps as well. Dark Magic Secrets is a 2-in-1 fusion and a ritual spell for the archetype, which is kind of lovely in my opinion. And Chaos Scepter Blast is just an alternative way to summon the Dark Magician of Chaos, a worse one over Dedication Through Light and Darkness in my opinion, because the way it's performed is you can your opponent has to destroy this specifically by a card effect, and its first effect is there. It's all right, but it could have been a lot better due to the fact that we're talking about Dark Magicians here. Sure, it banishes face down, which makes the card a lot harder to retrieve, but Cyphering Lord Omega is a heavily ran card, so which has the effect to fetch back face down banish cards. So yeah. And the last card in the Dark Magician lineup is Magician's Combination, which is a continuous trap that basically allows you to swap through your Dark Magicians and Dark Magician Girls. Which is fine, but ultimately pointless. All you can basically do is make Dark Magician Girl hit the field with a lot more attack points if you splash your graveyard with multiples of Dark Magicians using this effect. But yeah, if you run this, it's probably not more than one. And that was it for Dark Magicians, and now we have two main deck monsters worth of support for the Destiny board Necrofear archetype. Those being the two level 3 monsters, Dark Spirit of Malice and Dark Spirit of Banishment, which were specifically made to revive the original Dark Necrofear, or, well, the Retrain, it also works on him. Well, basically any level 8 Fiend monster. They were made to revive him on a very specific way, and yeah, the best part about them is that you can search them out with Tour Guide of the Underworld for rank 3 plays, and that's about as far as it goes, so let's move on. Next up, we have the archetype that received a card worth of support. The only one of them is our Altergeist, with the Link 4 monster, Altergeist Memory Gun. Yeah, I said it. I said they were gonna print it, and here it is, finally. It's the boss monster of the Memory Gun archetype. It's a Link 4 that points left, left, and bottom right. Basically, Borreload Dragon arrows. It requires 2 or more Altergeist monsters. And it has a okay effect. It's basically the definition of a semi-boss monster. I still believe that Altergeists have one more monster. One more bigger and more powerful monster on the way after this one, which did not appear in the anime, of course, since Reigns was miles over before this thing came out. But yeah, it's a perfectly serviceable card. However, the problem lies in the fact that Altergeist can usually have really so much trouble in summoning Link 4s. So yeah, most of them. Most of their plays revolve around summoning Link 1 or Link 2 monsters, and maybe occasionally Link 3. That's why Prime Banshee is not usually ran at 3 in their builds. So yeah, if you run this, you're usually fine at 1 or 2, but be careful if you're running 2 of them, because the extra deck space for Altergeist can be a bit too tight with the Link 1 and Link 2 Link monsters. So yeah. And now moving on to Code Talkers, which also got some new support after my original video. First of which is Decode Talker Heat Soul. Has the same link arrows and stats as the original Decode Talker, and it requires 2 or more Cyburst monsters with different attributes. And it's pointless. Very pointless. The only purpose of this thing even existing that I could think of is to to reference the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh! Reigns by far has the most amount of Yaoi hentai doujins on and hentai nets. So yeah, that's the only reason for this thing existing that I can think of. Yeah, sure, you can use it, use its effect every 375 duels, but yeah, you're better off running the original Deco Talker or the Nordico Talker Extended, or the last card that they received as support, the Link 4 Access Code Talker, the last code talker that appeared in the anime. It's a Link 4 that points up, down, right, left, and right, basically having Firewall Dragon arrows, requires 2 or more effect monsters, and it's basically the card destruction on steroids, which basically has protection while destroying said cards, as in your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to the activation of this card's effects, which is pretty dang busted. You can also make this thing into a huge beatstick upon its being link summoned, and yeah, the attack point boost is also permanent, and Silent Codec became a hell of a lot more viable when this thing got released. So yeah, great card. Uh, Next up we have At Ignisters, which also received 3 cards worth of support. First of which is the big, mighty, the Arrival Cybers At Ignister, which is our first Link 6 in the game and in the anime, of course. Requires 3 or more monsters with different attributes. You can only control one of them, and it has the all the other effects that were present in the anime, except by the counter generating and removing counters to make it unaffected only by your opponent's card effects. Now it's permanently unaffected by anything, so yeah, we thought that was gonna get heavily nerfed, but instead it's a very easy to make Quasar and Ad Ignisters, which are bound to become a very prominent deck with the existence of this. So yeah, fantastic card, and you should always consider running it and building a deck around it. And the next card that they received is Eye Contact, which I thought that was never gonna get printed due to the fact how much draw power it offers. Drawing 3 cards by placing a specific field spell on the bottom of the deck is pretty dang good. And this basically ensures that terraforming and metaverse are sure as hell not going off the limited list. And lastly, the last Ad Ignister support card is IQ, which is alright lockdown card, which basically shuts down Link summoning for 1 turn. Well, you can only special summon once per turn, while this card is on the field, special summon Link monsters, I mean. Which is actually a pretty solid kind of shutdown card. The only problem is, of course, you have to control an Ad Ignister monster in order to trigger this effect. So if it was if it was generic, it would have seen the ban list really fast due to the fact that Vanity's Emptiness is also banned because it's just simply generic and it blocks all special summons. So yeah, kind of understandable. Alright, we're moving on to the last stretch. Only 3 archetypes, well, technically 4 archetypes remain. First of which is another archetype that only received 1 card worth of support, which are Noble Knights. Flame Noble Knight Renaud, just like the last Flame Noble Knight monster, which I covered in the review, is completely out of place in terms of how the deck is supposed to function, and of course it's a secondary tuner monster, and that's the only notable thing about this effect. And it's basically made to function with the gear-free Gemini builds, and that's basically the only place where it belongs. And yeah, don't ever bother summoning this or even running this in Noble Knights. Next up, the archetype that received support is the Galaxy archetype. First of which, we start off with the level 8 Nebula Dragon, which is a pretty dang splashable and very easily summonable level 8 monster for rank 8 plays. It basically also really incentivizes you to run Schwarzschild Dragon as well, so yeah. It also restricts you into light and dark dragon monsters for the rest of this turn, which is completely understandable with this level of special summoning. And it also happens to have the same stats as the Schwarzschild Dragon, which I didn't notice up until now. And one of the level 8 monsters which you can summon with this thing's effect is Galactic Spiral Dragon, but you're most likely going to be summoning this thing after you've summoned Nebula Dragon and another dragon monster, because it has a special summoning condition of its own, and it basically allows for a 3 material rank 8 plays, which are always pretty dang solid. Basically allows you to go into Neo Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, or if you have materials to make it, basically a Galaxy Eyes Cypher Dragon and a Galaxy Eyes Cypher Blade Dragon on top of a, well, basically any Galaxy Eyes rank 8 monster. Also Tachyon Dragon is also a nice choice, which became a whole lot popular with the release of Galaxy Satellite Dragons. So yeah, great card. And the last card in the Galaxy lineup is Hyper Galaxy, which is an archetypal Share the Pain, which I never thought I'd see in the game for a long time, which also gives you a free Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon. And it also happens to be a quick play. You can also attribute some monsters that have decent graveyard effects, such as some of the Photon monsters. I think Photon Vanisher has a floating effect that can benefit from being tributed by this. I'm not sure. I need to check. So yeah, it's a decent card to consider running. However, I wouldn't advise maxing out on it because you do not always benefit from doing that. And next up, we have 2 archetypes that only receive 1 card worth of support. First of which is the Utopia archetype with a future number 0 Utopic Future Dragon, which isn't a dragon. What the hell? Anyway, it requires 3 Xyz materials, monsters with the same rank except number monsters. It's a rank 0 monster with the original rank being treated as 1. And it basically has a monster shutdown effect with the basically no, it actually it has a monster shutdown effect which if you negate a monster on the field, which you most likely are going to be negating monster effects from the field, you can actually take control of said monster, which plays into the gimmick of future monsters. The future monsters being utopic future monsters, I should have said. So yeah, this is a decent card to go into. You can also Xyz summon it by Xyz stacking it on top of the original Utopic Future, which basically gives it more incentive to run it. So yeah, it's also a 3000 attack beat stick, which can be special summoned by that way. So yeah, it's a very easy monster to summon, and you should always consider running it in your Utopia deck. And this is where I would usually end my video, but in order to not make this guy wait for the Volume 3, I'll review him now. The new Performapal Odd Eyes Supreme King Magician card. Well, only Odd Eyes card. That being Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon Overlord, which is the retrain of the original. It has the exact same stats as the original. The only difference about this thing being having a bit of a better effect due to the fact that you can also Xyz stack it on top of the original. Or you can also Xyz stack it on top of Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon, and its pendulum effect actually supports Phantom Knights as well. God knows why, because yeah, Phantom Knights can benefit from running Rebellion Dragon a bit, maybe. Raging Dragon is also a bit of an option there as well. You can also summon Phantom Knights Xyz monsters from your extra deck, I guess. But yeah, all this thing basically is, it's basically a Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon with an additional Xyz materials, and if you it basically allows you to trigger its multiple attacking effect a lot easier. So yeah, I guess that's what it is. And that was it for this Archetype rematch. Stay tuned for Volume 3, which will be released Well, when I have enough material, which I probably presume is gonna be a long time before I have enough material. But stay tuned tomorrow as I'll be uploading the final archetype analysis that I am able to do at the moment, which will be hero monsters. Every single one of them, all 247 cards will be reviewed. However, it won't be in the format that I did the Performapal video. God no, that video was 3 hours and almost 4 hours long, and if I did it like that, my video would be close to 8 hours long. If I did it like that, really, it would be a lot. It would be really too long in order to make it like that. So I'm going to be making the hero archetype analysis the same as the format of this video. I'm going to line up first off the cards that you definitely don't want to run in modern decks and that are complete trash, and then all the other cards and the variants of heroes, because there are a lot of them. I'll talk about every single breed and sub-breed of heroes individually and say what type of style they are based on, and are they worth building a deck around, or how they're worth building a competitive deck, how much worth they have in a competitive hero deck. But enough about that, more about this tomorrow. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned for more Bridge Book and updates, comment, like, and subscribe. And as usual, I'll upload the next video whenever I can. Have a good day, see ya, and peace!